Did you know that Warren Buffett started preparing for the next economic collapse years before it happened? While investors around the world were celebrating their profits, he was quietly selling stocks and accumulating billions in cash. But why? What did he see that others didn't? In this video, you'll discover how Buffett anticipated the crisis, where he's putting his money now, and most importantly, what you can do today to protect your wealth. With over 70 years of experience and a fortune built on discipline, Buffett teaches us that true success lies in acting before the storm hits, the invisible danger, the market before the collapse. At the end of 2024, the financial market seemed unstoppable. The S&P 500 was climbing steadily. Companies like Tesla, Apple, Meta, and Nvidia were skyrocketing in market value, attracting a wave of new investors filled with optimism and confidence. In the headlines, it was all celebration, record profits, booming technology, and a promising future ahead. It was the perfect image of euphoria, and also the perfect setup for a collapse. Warren Buffett was watching it all in silence. While most people got swept up in the excitement, he recognized a dangerous pattern. Buffett learned over decades that the biggest risks usually emerge during times of greatest optimism. As he famously said, "Be fearful when others are greedy." And what he saw was exactly that. Greed, overconfidence, and investors believing that this time is different. The same mistake that came before the dot-com bubble, the 2008 crisis, and so many other historic crashes. The truth is, many ignored the warning signs. Inflation continued to push prices up. Interest rates were rising, and the financial statements of several companies revealed weaknesses hidden behind marketing hype and inflated projections. Meanwhile, capital kept pouring into the market as if there were no tomorrow. The problem? Tomorrow came. And Buffett knew that sooner or later, the excess would come at a cost. The party wouldn't last forever, and when the first signs of crisis appeared, the unprepared would pay the price. That's when Buffett made one of the most strategic moves of his recent career, a series of quiet decisions that revealed he was already seeing what no one else wanted to face. The masterstroke: Buffett's strategic sell-offs. While the market celebrated, Buffett acted quietly. Since late 2022, he began a series of strategic sales through his holding company, Berkshire Hathaway. But unlike the average investor, who sells in panic and buys in euphoria, Buffett did the opposite. He sold during the euphoria. He knew that when everything seems too perfect, something is usually wrong. Companies were reaching valuations that didn't reflect their actual earnings. And with interest rates consistently rising, credit was becoming more expensive and consumer spending more fragile. It was the perfect environment to reduce exposure. Buffett started selling gradually. In Q4 of 2022, he sold about $15 billion worth of stocks. In Q1 of 2023, another $10 billion. In Q3, another $5 billion. But it was at the end of 2024 that the movement became even more aggressive. He sold $17 billion in a single quarter, followed by $75 billion in the next, and another $35 billion in the final quarter of the year. In total, within just 12 months, Buffett sold more than $120 billion in stocks. Among the top assets sold was Apple, one of his largest historical positions. The reasoning? According to Buffett, the tech sector was experiencing a bubble fueled by cheap money and unrealistic expectations. He also cut his stake in Bank of America, a bank he had long considered solid, which made the market even more uneasy. If even the banks were being dropped by Buffett, something very serious was coming. And what did he do with the money? It wasn't reinvested right away. He chose to accumulate one of the largest cash reserves in recent history, totaling over $328 billion in liquidity. This move wasn't just defensive, it was offensive, because when the market crashes and prices plummet, Buffett knows exactly what to do. buy solid companies for pennies on the dollar. But how did he know it was time to sell? What was the signal that made him act ahead of everyone else? That's where one of the most powerful tools in his arsenal comes in: the Buffett indicator. Buffett's thermometer, the indicator that predicted it all. While many investors followed shallow analyses and optimistic news, Buffett trusted a signal few understand: the so-called Buffett indicator. This metric compares the total value of the stock market with the country's gross domestic product, GDP. The logic is simple. If the market value of companies significantly exceeds the real size of the economy, a bubble is about to burst. Historically, when this indicator goes above 100%, the market is already considered overvalued. Before the 2008 crisis, for example, it hovered around 107%. But at the end of 2024, the number was alarming: 210%. In other words, the total value of U.S. stocks was more than double the size of the country's real economy. For Buffett, this was the ultimate red flag. It was no longer just a temporary correction, but a structural mismatch between value and reality. This indicator not only convinced him to sell, but also stopped him from making the most common mistake: over-investing at the peak of euphoria. That's why, while millions of investors were preparing to buy more, Buffett was doing the opposite. He wasn't just predicting a drop, he was foreseeing an imminent collapse. And this collapse, as we'll see next, wouldn't come from a single sector. The truth was even more worrying. Multiple sectors of the economy were inflated and ready to fall. The hidden bubbles, sectors at risk. The Buffett indicator revealed that the market was more overvalued than ever before. But what truly concerned the legendary investor was where that excessive valuation was concentrated. Buffett identified three major sectors that were inflated by unrealistic expectations, excessive stimulus, and optimism disconnected from reality. 1. Technology. A giant with feet of clay companies like Apple, Tesla, Meta, and other Silicon Valley giants saw their stock prices skyrocket during and after the pandemic. But that growth was fueled by artificially low interest rates, massive money printing, and a wave of inexperienced investors. Buffett warned, many of these companies increased in market value without their profits keeping pace. The result? A tech bubble ready to burst, especially among companies with weak business models that rely heavily on hype. 2. Banking sector. Confidence under threat. Even though he has long supported major banks, Buffett reduced his exposure to institutions like Bank of America. Why? Because he noticed that rising interest rates were putting pressure on the financial system. Credit became more expensive, defaults began to rise, and public confidence in banks started to waver. In times of crisis, a single rumor can trigger mass withdrawals, potentially leading to a chain reaction of bank failures. 3. Real estate, a silent bubble. During the pandemic, housing prices soared. With low interest rates and high demand, home prices hit record levels. But with the aggressive rise in interest rates in the years that followed, demand cooled and prices started to fall. Buffett knows that the real estate sector responds slowly to economic changes, but when it does, the drop is steep. And history has already shown what happens when a housing bubble bursts. The entire system feels the shock. These three sectors, technology, banking, and real estate, are pillars of the modern economy. And when the pillars shake, the entire structure is at risk. For Buffett, the collapse wouldn't be isolated. It would be systemic, slow, and progressive. That's why his strategy had to become even more selective and surgical. The answer was to shift focus, not to where the spotlight shines, but to where true resilience lies. The crisis isn't over yet. Anyone who thinks the worst is behind us is mistaken. For Buffett, what we've seen so far is just the first phase of the crisis. The market is cyclical. And during downturns, there's always a moment of false hope, the so-called dead cat bounces. These are short periods of recovery that make it seem like the crisis is over, when in reality, it's just beginning. That's when many investors act prematurely. They start buying stocks again, confident in a rebound, and end up blindsided when the second wave of the downturn hits. Buffett believes we're at exactly that point. The economy shows signs of temporary stability, but those signs aren't sustainable. Companies continue to suffer from inflation, declining consumption, squeezed profit margins, and expensive debt. In addition, structural imbalances remain. Public and private debt at historic levels. Inflation still pressuring essential goods. Key sectors on the verge of severe corrections. For him, the current crisis won't be as short-lived as many hope. It may stretch into 2025 or beyond, through a series of adjustments that will test the patience and strategy of every investor. That's why Buffett didn't just sell at the top. He isn't buying yet. He's waiting, because he knows the true bottom hasn't arrived. And when that moment comes, only those who are prepared will be able to take advantage of it. So how is he preparing? The answer lies in his new bets. And they aren't in the stock market, darlings, but in sectors that few are paying attention to, where Buffett is putting his money. While many try to guess the next hot sector, Buffett keeps things simple. He invests where people keep spending, even during hard times. This philosophy led him to strengthen his positions in three key sectors, historically resilient during periods of recession. 1. Energy, the foundation of everything. Buffett significantly increased his stake in Occidental Petroleum, a major player in the energy sector. Why? Because energy is essential. Even in crises, people still use gasoline, electricity, gas, and heating. The world may slow down, but it doesn't stop. Buffett understands that well-managed energy companies generate steady cash flow even in hostile environments. Additionally, this sector often benefits from global instability or geopolitical tension, making it a highly strategic investment. 2. Consumer staples. Essentials never stop. Another solid bet has been companies that sell food, hygiene products, and medication. These items aren't optional. In uncertain times, people cut non-essentials, but they keep buying the basics. Buffett increased positions in companies with a strong foothold in mass markets, broad distribution networks, and well-known brands. Such companies tend to preserve both margins and sales volumes, even when macroeconomic conditions tighten. 3. Alcoholic beverages, a cultural safe haven. It may seem surprising, but Buffett also invested in companies like Constellation Brands, owner of beer, wine, and spirits labels. The reason? Studies show that during recessions, alcohol consumption tends to remain stable, and in some cases, even increases. This behavior reflects people's desire for emotional relief during turbulent times. Buffett sees this not just as a market trend, but as predictable human behavior, and therefore a safe opportunity. These sectors don't promise quick gains, but they offer stability, cash flow, and predictability. Buffett's three favorite pillars during a crisis. But beyond stock picks, there's something he considers even more powerful. Having cash on hand at the right time can be your greatest competitive edge. The power of a cash reserve. While most investors worry about being 100% invested at all times, Buffett does the opposite. He sees liquidity as a strategic weapon, especially during crises. Today, Berkshire Hathaway holds over $324 billion in cash. To many, that looks like idle money. But for Buffett, that's his real trump card. During sharp market downturns, assets are sold at dirt-cheap prices. At those moments, those with cash don't panic. They take action. That's when Buffett typically buys strong companies at deep discounts, taking advantage of panicked sellers desperate to cover their losses. And he's proven this in practice. During the 2008 crisis, while many investors were emotionally paralyzed, Buffett used his liquidity to buy shares of Goldman Sachs and General Electric at unbelievable prices, and he reaped the rewards years later. The logic is simple. Liquidity means freedom. Having cash means you can calmly choose the best time to act, without being forced to sell assets in a rush or rely on market sentiment. That's why, even when he sees opportunities, Buffett is in no hurry. He waits for the ideal moment, that tipping point when the market loses control and rare opportunities appear for those who are ready. But to truly understand this kind of preparation, you have to look at the past, because this isn't the first time he's gotten it right while everyone else got it wrong. Lessons from past crises. Buffett doesn't predict the future with a crystal ball. He simply recognizes patterns and acts on them. That's exactly what he did in 2006 and 2007. While the world was celebrating the real estate boom, Buffett quietly began reducing his exposure to bank and insurance stocks. Few noticed, but in 2008, the bubble burst. The collapse of Lehman Brothers dragged the global financial system into one of the worst crises in modern history. And who was prepared? Buffett. With liquidity in hand, he invested in companies being sold for symbolic prices due to panic. That was the case with Goldman Sachs, General Electric, and Wells Fargo. These investments earned billions once the market recovered. More than money, he gained time and confidence. While others rushed to salvage what they could, Buffett calmly chose where to plant his next seeds. The pattern is repeating now. The stock sell-offs that began in 2022, the record cash accumulation, and the strategic withdrawal from vulnerable sectors are no coincidence. They are warnings. Buffett has learned with decades of experience that crises never come with a warning, but they always leave clues before they strike. And today's clues are eerily similar to those of 2007. Euphoria in specific sectors, elevated debt, excessive trust in the system. History, when ignored, tends to repeat itself. And once again, Buffett is reading the script in advance. Which brings us to a critical question. Which companies does he trust enough to hold or even increase his stake, even in such a turbulent scenario? Buffett's top 5 investments and what they have in common. Even in the midst of chaos, Buffett continues betting on a few select companies, those he sees as true economic fortresses. But what makes these companies so special? They all share a core principle in Buffett's philosophy: the economic moat, a long-lasting competitive advantage that protects them from rivals and ensures consistent profitability over time. Let's take a closer look at Berkshire Hathaway's 5 largest positions and what makes them so unique. 1. Apple. This tech giant is Buffett's single largest holding, and that's no accident. Apple isn't just a phone manufacturer, it has built a closed ecosystem, the famous walled garden, where its products and services are seamlessly integrated. Once inside, customers rarely leave. On top of that, the brand stands for status, quality, and loyalty. To Buffett, that level of customer retention is almost impossible to replicate, and that's worth gold. 2. Coca-Cola. Buffett has been investing in Coca-Cola for over 30 years, and it's not about the taste. Coca-Cola's strength lies in 3 pillars: an iconic global brand that evokes emotions like happiness and nostalgia, a diverse portfolio of beverages for every occasion, a massive distribution network, present in over 200 countries. Even with fierce competition, no one has managed to replicate this combination. 3. American Express. While other credit card companies compete by lowering fees, American Express charges more, and customers proudly pay it. Buffett understood that Amex's true value lies in status. Owning one of its cards is, for many, a symbol of personal success. In addition, the company maintains partnerships with luxury brands, exclusive services, and an extremely loyal customer base. 4. Bank of America. Unlike other banks that focus on a single segment, Bank of America offers an integrated system: checking accounts, credit cards, mortgages, investments, and business loans, all in one place. This integration builds strong customer loyalty and creates a very high exit barrier. To Buffett, Bank of America is a revenue-generating machine with operational stability. 5. Chevron. In the energy sector, Buffett made a big bet on Chevron. The company controls the entire value chain, from exploration to refining and distribution of oil. This gives Chevron large-scale operational efficiency, shielding it from sharp price swings in the energy market. It's also a company with decades of experience, cutting-edge technology, and reliable cash flow. These 5 companies operate in different industries, but they share something essential: deep economic moats, strong brands, and customers who rarely switch providers. And that's why, even amid global instability, Buffett continues to bet on them. Now, let's dive deeper into this concept of the economic moat and why it's the real key to lasting wealth. The concept of the economic moat. Imagine a castle surrounded by a wide moat filled with water. That moat prevents enemies from getting close easily, protecting those inside. In the business world, that moat is what shields a company from competition. For Buffett, this is the most important criterion before investing. Does the company have a real economic moat? This moat can take many forms: a strong and desirable brand, like Apple or Coca-Cola; an integrated business model, like Bank of America; a loyal and exclusive customer base, like American Express; scale efficiency and control of the supply chain, like Chevron; a closed ecosystem that keeps customers through convenience and compatibility, like Apple companies with economic sanctity. Moats can endure crises, competition, and market shifts, and still remain profitable. That's because they've built real barriers that prevent others from stealing their market share. This concept also protects the investor. By choosing companies with lasting competitive advantages, risk is reduced, and the chances of consistent returns increase over time. Buffett always says that a company being good today isn't enough. It needs to remain good for the next 10, 20, or 30 years. And only a strong economic moat can guarantee that. So, when building your portfolio, think like he does. Don't invest based on price or hype. Look for companies that are hard to replace, with products, structure, or culture that make them unique. Now that we understand the concept, let's look at those who don't act this way, and the brutal difference between the average investor and Warren Buffett. The difference between Buffett and the average investor. Most investors act on emotion. They buy in euphoria, sell in panic. They follow social media tips, chase trends, and panic at the first sign of a drop. Buffett does the exact opposite. He doesn't buy because it's trending. He buys because the company makes sense fundamentally, has an economic moat, and a consistent track record. While the average investor tries to predict the market based on rumors or daily news, Buffett blocks out the noise and stays focused on the long term. More than skill, what sets Buffett apart from most is discipline. He waits years for the right opportunity, and when it comes, he acts with precision and courage, even when everyone around him is terrified. He doesn't care what others are doing. He doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. Buffett invests with logic, strategy, and patience, and that's the secret. While many try to beat the market in months, he builds wealth over decades. But that doesn't mean you can't do the same. In fact, he's always left the path open for anyone willing to follow his philosophy. The next step is turning all of this into practice with simple yet powerful advice. Practical advice for investors. If you want to apply Warren Buffett's philosophy to your own financial life, you don't need billions. You need clarity, discipline, and patience. Here are the key pieces of practical advice inspired by his strategy. 1. Build a cash reserve. Buffett often emphasizes the importance of having liquidity at the right moments. Even if you can only save a small amount each month, build an opportunity fund. It will be your edge when the market is down and everyone else is selling. 2. Avoid overvalued companies. If you're investing in stocks that have skyrocketed in recent months without earnings to match, reconsider your position. Buffett always warns, price is what you pay, value is what you get. Don't buy something expensive just because it's rising. 3. Invest in defensive sectors. Buffett prioritizes companies that offer products and services people keep consuming in any scenario. Energy, food, hygiene products, beverages, well-structured banks. These sectors tend to fall less during crises and recover more quickly. 4. Diversify smartly. Buffett doesn't place bets on dozens of companies at random. He selects a few assets with high quality and strong predictability. You don't need to own 20 stocks, but you do need to deeply understand the 3 or 4 you do own. 5. Avoid panic. Stick to the plan. Crises will come. Markets will fall. What makes the difference is how you respond. Selling in panic almost always means locking in losses. Buffett recommends calm, analysis, and action only when it makes sense, never out of emotion. 6. Invest in knowledge. Before looking for the perfect stock, study. Understand how sectors work, how to read financial statements, how economic cycles unfold. The best return comes from a well-prepared mind. These principles, applied consistently, produce extraordinary results. And the most powerful one is simple. Act with logic when everyone around you is acting with fear. Now, if Buffett is right, he's not the only one who sees what's coming. Other major figures in the economy are sounding the alarm too. The economist's warning. Warren Buffett isn't the only seasoned voice warning about what's coming. Several internationally renowned economists are raising red flags about a potential global economic crisis. 1. Nouriel Roubini. The perfect storm is forming. Famous for predicting the 2008 crisis, Roubini says the world now faces a dangerous combination: unsustainable levels of debt, geopolitical tensions, persistent inflation, and increasingly limited monetary policy. In his view, we're facing a crisis that could be deeper and longer-lasting than most people imagine. 2. Robert Shiller. We're living in irrational exuberance. Nobel Prize-winning economist Shiller warns of bubbles in multiple asset classes, especially in stocks and real estate. According to him, prices have risen far beyond fundamentals, driven by exaggerated expectations and emotional behavior. At any moment, a severe correction could occur. 3. Kenneth Rogoff. Debt will come due. Rogoff has studied financial collapse cycles throughout history. His analysis suggests that current levels of public and private debt around the world are at the brink of unsustainable. He believes governments will struggle to meet their obligations without triggering prolonged recession. 4. Ray Dalio. We're at the end of a global economic cycle. Founder of Bridgewater Associates, one of the largest hedge funds in the world, Dalio sees signs of a credit bubble nearing its end. He points to growing social inequality, political instability, and asset bubbles across various markets as fuel for a major new crisis. These names aren't internet doomsayers. They are authorities who influence decisions at central banks, trillion-dollar funds, and governments worldwide. And they all have something in common with Buffett. They believe the world is heading into a period of severe adjustment, and that those who are unprepared may pay a very high price. But while some sound the alarm, others prepare. And preparation starts with a choice. Act now, or be caught off guard. We'll talk more about this in the next chapter. The truth is, you don't need to be a billionaire to act like one. What separates those who thrive from those who fall during a crisis isn't money, it's mindset. Buffett once said, "Someone is sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago." That's the essence of preparation. Every dollar saved, every conscious decision, every strategic choice you make today is a seed. And in the future, that seed could be what supports your safety, your freedom, and your peace of mind. It's easy to get swept up in fear, alarming headlines, or the belief that there's nothing I can do. But the truth is the opposite. The greatest opportunities appear precisely when fear is at its peak. And you don't need to time the top or bottom of the market. You just need to be ready. Have cash. Have a plan. Have clarity. The time to prepare isn't when the crisis arrives. It's now. Because when it hits, it'll be too late to start planting. So stop and think. What are you doing today that your future self will thank you for? If you haven't started yet, the next chapter will show you exactly where to begin. Buffett's legacy and philosophy. Warren Buffett didn't build his fortune by relying on luck. He built it with clarity of purpose, patience, and long-term strategic thinking. Since buying his first stock at age 11, Buffett has refined a simple yet powerful philosophy. Only invest in what you understand, and invest as if you were holding it forever. Instead of chasing trends or trying to predict the short term, he devotes his time to studying companies, industries, economic cycles, and human behavior. And most importantly, he focuses on answering one key question. Will this company still be alive, profitable, and relevant in 10, 20, or 30 years? This way of thinking goes against everything the modern financial market encourages. Today, we're bombarded with promises of quick gains, speculation, risky bets, and can't-miss opportunities. But Buffett shows us that true wealth is built with foundation, not with haste, and his legacy goes far beyond money. He is a living lesson that financial success is within reach for anyone willing to think differently. Even with billions under management, Buffett still lives simply, has stayed in the same house for decades, and continues his daily habit of studying the markets, not out of obligation, but because he understands that ongoing financial education is the greatest asset anyone can have. This mindset of patient, disciplined, and grounded building is what transforms an ordinary journey into an extraordinary legacy. And perhaps Buffett's greatest lesson is this: true wealth isn't just money, it's freedom. Freedom to choose where, how, and with whom you live. Freedom to rely on no one. Freedom to build your own path. And that freedom begins with small decisions, which, accumulated over time, become unshakable. But how do you turn these principles into real-life actions? That's exactly what we'll explore now. How to apply this to your life. Now is the time to turn knowledge into action. It doesn't matter if you're just starting or have been investing for years. Buffett's philosophy can, and should, be adapted to your reality. Here are 5 practical steps you can take starting today. 1. Build your liquidity reserve. Set aside a portion of your monthly income, no matter how small, to create an opportunity fund. This reserve will be essential when the market drops, because that's when the biggest future profits are born. 2. Invest in businesses. You understand, before putting money into any stock, ask yourself, do I understand what this company does? How does it make money? Will it still be relevant in 10 years? If you don't know the answers, don't invest. 3. Focus on essential sectors: energy, food, healthcare, basic services. These are areas that continue operating no matter what. Buffett always starts here. So can you. 4. Avoid following the crowd. If everyone's talking about a stock, it might already be too late. Learn to think independently. Study the fundamentals, not the trends. 5. Be patient. Financial success doesn't happen overnight. It's built through consistency, month after month. Don't try to time the market. Invest with a vision of decades, not weeks. The good news? You don't need to be perfect. You just need to start with intention. And if you've made it this far, you're clearly ready to take that step. In the next and final chapter, we'll bring everything together in a powerful call to action. Because knowing what to do is the first step, but actually doing it is what changes everything. You've come this far. You've absorbed the principles, you've understood the signs, and now you know what Warren Buffett would do, and what you can do too. The question is, will you act, or will you wait for the next crisis to catch you unprepared? Start now. Review your investments. Build your cash reserve. Choose companies with strong fundamentals. And above all, stop making decisions based on emotion. Buffett teaches us that wealth is not an accident, it's a behavior. It's the result of small decisions repeated with discipline over time. So, if this content helped you see the market through a new lens, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below, "Today, I choose to protect my financial future." Never underestimate the power of a decision made with clarity. Most people stay stuck in the short term. You don't have to follow that path. Buffett has already proven that even amid chaos, it's possible to thrive. But only those who plant today will harvest tomorrow. Remember your freedom. It begins with conscious choices, made in silence, far from the spotlight. And sooner or later, those choices bloom. Your financial journey may be slow. It may be challenging, but it's yours, and it's worth it. So take the first step now. Invest in knowledge. Invest with logic. Invest in yourself. Because in the end, the true investor doesn't wait for the right moment. He creates it.